So 14 years ago, I was working at an oil and gas company, and I got to be on the HR team, and the CEO, who'd been there 9 years, said it's time to do my succession, and I got to be the water boy on that team, and they hired this thing called a search firm. Well, I'd never heard of such a thing. I'd only been a senior pastor, and the church I served, which was a great church, it had taken 3 years to find me. I was there 6, and then they took 3 years to find my successor. Well, this oil and gas company found their next CEO in 90 days using a search firm. So I came home and I said to Adrian, we'd just gotten married, we'd just blended our families, and I said, babe, I think I'm supposed to quit my job and start something new for churches. And so I'm like, why does the business world have a better solution than the bride? So 14 years ago, I said, I need to quit my job, start something new. And she looked at me and she said, right, that's because churches love new ideas, right? Yeah, she's the smarter one of the two of us. But 14 years ago, we started a new idea for churches, and it was the fall of 2008. What a smart time to quit your job. Now, 14 years later, it's really common for people to use a search firm. And it's been so cool that this innovative idea we had 14 years ago has become a movement of groups. So now the question we get is not, why should we use a search firm? Now the question is, what makes your search firm different than all the other options around there? Well, we've been studying how to boil that down. And we've been innovating, just like we started 14 years ago, to adapt to new models of leadership and new ways of doing things. So we're not specializing in one model. We're not specializing in one kind of church. We serve all shapes and sizes and flavors and colors and races and theological persuasions. But we do have 3 things that set us apart as distinct from anything else I've seen out there. For one, we've led the way. 14 years ago, we decided to try a new idea with church. Now, 2,500 completed searches later, we're still leading the way. Maybe you've noticed the model for leadership isn't the same everywhere anymore. Some people are going to more collaborative models where maybe there are 2 or 3 leaders in the church. Some people are taking on multi-site models that are different than anything that's been done before. The innovation that we used when we started this movement, we're still using to adapt as God continues to unveil what the church is going to look like in the future. And that leading the way from day one of searches for churches has now led to innovating and leading the way for searches for churches and for schools and for Christian nonprofits and pretty much anyone who's on Team Jesus. We want to help you find your key staff. We've been leading the way a long time. We're still innovating and learning to lead the way even more. Another difference is we're kind of right by your side. There's a friend of mine who's in the Marines, and he says there's a saying we have in the Marines that we are mission ready. That means we sleep with our boots right by the bed and our bag ready to go. When the call comes in, we're off. That's what we are. Probably dysfunctionally so. We probably ought to get like some group therapy about responding to people so quickly and dropping what we're doing to get back to people. So we believe we have to be mission ready and right by your side the entire search. I don't think there's any way in the world I could do a search for a church or a school or a nonprofit if I had some other job that I had to be paying attention to. If I had to be thinking about what the song set for the weekend was, or what the message series was going to be, or what I was going to do with the new teachers that were coming into the school. This can't be a side hustle. This is our mission to stay right by you 100% of the time. That's why all of our people are full-time employees and are not doing this as a side hustle. It's a different approach. Maybe I'm just old school, but it's an approach that works for us and we think will work for you. So a third difference for us is we're not approaching searches as passing names along to you. We're not just going to send resumes over and over. We're not just throw pasta at the wall and see what sticks. No. For us, this is an organ transplant, and that's serious. And if you think about that metaphor, organ transplants are delicate. They're not just science, they're art. And they're really dependent on DNA and tissue matching. We're about 3 miles from the medical center in Houston, largest gathering of doctors in the world. So I've had the chance to actually talk to some transplant doctors about this, and I say, what separates the best transplant doctors from the rest? Invariably, transplant doctors will say, oh, it's the tissue match. I mean, getting a donor list together is hard, but the tissue match is where it really comes together, because you can put a healthy heart into a healthy body, and if the tissue doesn't match, it's a bad ending for everyone. Wow, that image has stuck with me for 14 years. So instead of approaching a search saying, I've got some names to give you, I've got some people that might work. No. We slow down and study the DNA of the group that we're trying to help, whether it's a church or a school or a nonprofit or even a Christian-driven for-profit. We want to know what your tissue is like. And then we want to go make a donor list of candidates. And it may be that it's not just people we know. I mean, when you get a kidney transplant, where do you go first? A sibling, a known quantity. So we approach that donor list not just looking for names, but for people that might fit this tissue match that we've been looking at with you, this DNA study that we're doing the entire time we're following through on a search. If you ask people who haven't ever used this before, what value do you think you're going to get by hiring Vanderbloemen? Near the top of the list is you're going to introduce candidates I wouldn't find otherwise. And we do that. But if you interview people after the search and say, what was the best value they brought? Over and over and over, you're going to hear people say, they really understood us. They brought us somebody that feels like long lost family. Man, the person just fit right in. And it's not always about competency. Tissue match. It's the difference maker, and it's what we focus on in a distinct way that we think is a little different than anything else that's out there. We're still learning, but we're committed to studying. How can we be right by your side? How can we keep leading the way? And how can we make this about transplants, not transactions? That's the focus we have as we try and carry a tradition that we started 14 years ago into the future to try and help the church move farther and faster.